you would always hear about real estate and you're really listening for real estate conversations now. And there are people around you that are in your circle that are buying and selling houses and they are not talking to you about it at all. And so it can be really challenging and hurtful at the beginning of your career when you realize, hey, why aren't these people using me? But what I can tell you is it happens to everyone.
My life got busy, his life got busy. I didn't reach out to him for a period of time. I run into him. I found out he's bought a house and,
Jeez.
it hurt. And so I was like, man, I wanted to say, like, why didn't you call me? Every time I encounter this, every single time, I try to ask myself, what should I have done or what did I not do for them not to use me? And there's always an answer. If there's someone in your life that is not cheering you on, if they are saying, hey, real estate's pretty hard, you might want to think about doing something different, or anything negative, that is a person you want to distance yourself from. I don't care if it's friends or family. You want to put them at arm's length.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about something differently today. We're going to talk about your relationships as it pertains to success. And the way that I structured this is I basically put it in phases as you progress throughout your career, because understanding how you interact with the world and interact with other people is really important. And then also knowing, and I think you and I both have had some experience along the way that we'd like to share with you in terms of those relationships that are around you, right? And how you build them effectively and what you need to kind of look out for as you're on your path. And the first one that I really want to bring right out of the gate at the top end. By the way, if you haven't, please take the time to like and subscribe and give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much. Okay, so the first place is when you are an agent and you're a new agent and your friends and family don't use you. And that's one of those things that can be extremely hurtful on the top end of your career. Your whole perception of real estate changes really within the first 6 months because you're going, hey, because guess what? All the people you heard, you would always hear about real estate and you're really listening for real estate conversations now. And there are people around you that are in your circle that are buying and selling houses and they are not talking to you about it at all. And so it can be really challenging and hurtful at the beginning of your career when you realize, hey, why aren't these people using me? But what I can tell you is it happens to everyone. And when you're a new agent, a lot of your friends and family won't use you. Some of them will. There are some people who are going to be supportive no matter what you do, but there's going to be a large portion of friends and family that don't use you. And there's what you got to know about it. It is not personable. It's not personable. It's not personal.
It's not personable
It is
at
not.
all.
It's not a personal thing. It's not personal. Okay. People need to know you, like you, and trust you to buy or sell with you. And they might know you and they might like you, but they may not trust you quite yet. And so you've got to build that trust. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's exposure, sometimes it's marketing and advertising. Sometimes it's having a friend that they know that worked with you. It's just going to take some time. So you have to show them, and it's just going to take some time. So don't get your feelings hurt.
Every time I encounter this, every single time, I try to ask myself, what should I have done or what did I not do for them not to use me? And there's always an answer. And I'll give you an example. So a longtime friend of mine, our families were very close growing up. They had 4 sons. I went on vacation with this family. I spent the night with this family. I did everything with this family. They were like my second set of parents. He was like my brother I didn't have. I was showing him houses during COVID, and it became clear to both of us that he just wasn't ready. He was going through a divorce. He was, they were going through a custody battle for a child. It was just a whole thing, and he just wasn't ready to buy this house. And I knew it, he knew it, and we just mutually agreed, hey, let's pump the brakes on this. Mm-hmm. Well, my life got busy, his life got busy. I didn't reach out to him for a period of time. I run into him. I found out he's bought a house. And
Jeez.
It hurt. And so I was like, man, I wanted to say, like, why didn't you call me? And you know what? The first thing I said was, you know what? I didn't reach out to him. There was a period of time where we weren't talking, and that happens when you have friends that are for that long. There might be periods of time in your life where you don't pick up the phone and call them, and you don't talk to them every day, and that's kind of completely normal. Well, this is one of those cases where I hadn't reached out to him for a while to have lunch or anything like that.
Yeah.
He walked into a new build. There was an agent sitting at the desk, and he bought it on the spot. And that's my fault. Like, I should have been pinging him from time to time, asking how things were going, and I probably would have gotten that sale, but I didn't. And so that was me. That wasn't him. And so it's never personal. The time was right. He walked in. It was available. They did the transaction in 30 minutes, and it was over.
Yeah, and probably like during that time is, I would imagine like your head's a mess and you're not sure where you stand with everybody. Your whole life's kind of crazy during a time like that. And so it was probably just a reactive decision. And you're right. It's like, well, yeah, what could I have done? I could have followed up. I could have, pinged him more often, taken him out to lunch. But, ultimately you learn from that and you move on. But just don't take that stuff too personally. Look for opportunities where you can do better, but it's just going to happen. The second phase of this is when it's like, okay, it's been some time and everybody's cheering you on. They're seeing that you have some success and they will be supportive of you and sometimes like benevolent, right? They feel like it's the same reason, like when we, small businesses, like you want to support small businesses. Okay. And it's like, you like the person, you want to support them. And so there's this sort of mutual feeling of support and benevolence that you're doing at the same time from a consumer perspective to that small business owner or to their friend or family member that they're trying to support. Okay. So they want to support you. And this is like what I call the small business sweet spot, right? When you are kind of coming up, you're starting to get some momentum and people are really happy to see you succeed and are using you. And so it's the sweet spot. It's like, think about, the new restaurant in town or the new bar in town or the new whatever, that you might know that small business owner and you want to support them and you frequent that establishment. That's really the sweet spot of business.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to take this opportunity in phase 2, or what we're calling phase 2, to highlight something. If there's someone in your life that is not cheering you on, if they are saying, hey, real estate's pretty hard, you might want to think about doing something different, or anything negative, that is a person you want to distance yourself from. I don't care if it's friends or family. You want to put them at arm's length. I'm not saying never talk to them again. Yeah. I'm not saying be mean to them. I'm saying surround yourself with people who believe in you, no matter what, who support you, and who are not negative about the things you're pursuing in your life, because you don't need it, and it will not lead to success. It will lead to self-doubt, and that's where you're going to start falling off the rails as a real estate agent.
I agree. Also in phase 2, though, you run into potential friendship challenges, because in phase 2, you are realizing when you're doing real estate, you get into people in the nitty-gritty with people. Nitty-gritty of their finances, nitty-gritty of their relationship, because there might be a back and forth where the husband and wife don't agree with each other. You might find out that person's acting crazy because they're under high stress. And so it can create, it's like what you think you wanted. And it's like, what I wanted was all my friends and family to use me. And then you start to go, ooh, this is creating some difficulty in some of my relationships, because guess what? Inevitably, a deal's going to go a little bit south. Somebody's going to get angry with you. You may have dropped the ball on something because you're a human being. You're not going to do everything perfectly. Maybe you even did something out of inexperience that you shouldn't have done. And then the other thing is you got to see him at a party, or you got to see him at church, or you got to see him at the school function when you may feel like you did the wrong thing. Because look, you're not always going to do the right thing. Being an entrepreneur means charting new territory. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't always be thinking about what the right decision is. You always should be thinking about the right decision, right? And making the right decision and giving the right guidance. But guess what? Sometimes you're going to be wrong. And so you're going to have to push through that discomfort, push through some of that relationship challenge as a part of being an entrepreneur and a part of doing business with your friends and family. And I would say there's been even times where I'm like, I really love this person, I can't do business with them.
Yeah,
like
no,
I saw that on the front end.
it happens a lot. And
Yeah.
and as a lender, on when I put my lender hat on, I just have to realize, like, look, it's just sometimes not in the cards. I mean, you find out so much about a person that maybe it's just better left unknown as friends. Like you find out about that missed payment they had on their house in 3 years ago, or that bankruptcy they didn't tell any of their buddies about, or the fact that they've run up a lot of debt, or they don't make as much money as maybe they alluded that they did in on your golf trip. Like, these are things that, like, you're digging into a lot, and so you can totally understand why somebody might not want that level of detail shared.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're running into these potential friendship challenges, here's what I can tell you. Being on the other side of a lot of this and knowing like what it's like. I mean, there's been situations where, people have been really angry with me, whether I did something wrong or not. And then like I'm having to sit a row away from them in church. That can be really, really challenging emotionally. And so what I can tell you is time heals wounds. Right? Given enough time, all of those things will dissipate. You're not, forever going to be at odds with these people. It's just a part of being a human being, and a part of like you being courageous and doing something new, you being courageous and stepping out and daring to do business with your friends and family, and to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner. It's going to sometimes get complicated, and given enough time, those emotions will cool, and some insight will be brought into the situation. And if, sometimes if you feel like, hey, you know what, I feel like I really need to apologize to these people, then go do it.
Well, I will tell you the quickest path back to normalcy is to own the mistake.
Yeah.
So if there was in fact something, and it could just be something where you guys just don't mesh well and there was no actual mistake made, it's just, it's not a great business relationship. But if there was a mistake that was made, own it.
Yeah.
Say, look, here's what I did. Here's what I should have done. Won't happen again. Doesn't really help you much because it happened in your transaction, but I want you to know, I apologize. I shouldn't have done it that way. I learned.
Yeah.
And that will go a long way. And it may not go a long way in that moment, but the more distance you put from that mistake, they're going to remember the fact that you owned it. And I guarantee you it will change the future result. Guarantee you.
Yeah. Okay. So then phase 3, right, is a couple of things happen in phase 3 in your progression. One of them is you're meeting new people and you're making new friends. And a lot of times if you are like, let's say you're on the path and you're having a success in your career, it's a bit of like, hey, I'm in a new social group, right? But, and so that can be exciting. There's a couple things that happen there though, which is one of them is these new folks that you're interacting with right on this path. Guess what? They already have realtors that they're using or lenders that they're using already. So they've got all that stuff established. So they may not be using you yet. So it's kind of like back to the beginning. But the other thing that happens, I find in phase 3 is that you might get some pushback from your friends and family, or some non-use from them again. So basically they're like, I don't want to prescribe envy or jealousy as that, because that might be a part of it, but there's a real aspect of, okay, they're getting a little too big for their britches, or I want to give somebody else a shot because you're already successful. So let me kind of give this newer agent a shot, things like that. So that can often happen in that phase 3, where, you might be hanging out with different people, or that perception of, oh, well, they're doing great. They don't need any help.
Yeah, certainly happens.
Right. And also you can do this too, where you want to make it look like you don't need anybody's help. And so be cautious about that too. It's like you need to continue to be appreciative of people and to give as much gratitude as possible so you can hang on to as many of those relationships as possible. One of the things I love, one of my favorite comedian, who actually doesn't live too far from here, is a guy named Nate Bargatze. And he always takes pictures with his fans, always says, this is one of his lines. He goes, hey, look, none of this is lost on me. I appreciate this so much. Right. And whether he's in front of a crowd of 150 people, which I've seen him in that crowd, or now he's selling out Bridgestone, right? But he always is like, hey, I appreciate this so much. He's never too big for his fans. He always like takes time. And so that's what I would encourage you to be like. You may not recognize yourself as coming up in the world, but you are, right, in that path of success. And so you need to recognize and don't forget, like basically don't forget where you came from.
Yeah, his world changed almost overnight. Yeah, lives in the neighborhood. Good, very down to earth person.
Yeah. The next phase is where a lot of those relationships, how do I want to say this? It's not, your business is not as dependent upon them. Right. And so you basically have built in systems, processes, that elevated level of gratitude, attention, to where you're not as sensitive around those things happening. And you just kind of go, and this is really where you want to get to in terms of your relationships. It's like, hey, look, I'm here to serve people. I'm here to interact with people as best I can. Some people are going to use me. Some people are not going to use me. All of that's fine. Some people want to use the new realtor as they're coming up. All of that is fantastic. All of that's great. And it doesn't really have impact on my business.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a reason why someone doesn't use you. But in this phase, it's gotten to the point where it just doesn't matter all that much because you've got business referred to you from so many different angles. And the reason why you get so upset early on in your career is because you need that deal. You need that deal to hit your benchmarks along the way. And when you get to this phase, you kind of just don't. Like,
I'll share a story just of, and I'm not trying to put myself on the mountain or anything. I just wanted to share a story about kind of my feeling around something that happened recently, which was someone reached out to me from church and they said, hey, we're having trouble with our qualification. And I said, hey, they said, but somebody from church said, reach out to you before we kind of give up on the search. And can you help us? Can you connect us with somebody? And so I was able to make a connection and I was able to actually get them qualified and ready to purchase a home. And, you came back to me because I sent them to you. You came back to me and you said, hey, man, did you know they were using another agent? And I go, no, I didn't know they were using another agent. But I don't know if you remember. I was like, that's probably fine.
Yeah.
Right. It was almost like I was like, you know what? I want them to use who they want to use. I was just glad that I could help. And again, I don't want to put myself on a mountain like I've reached the pinnacle, but I only share that to say those things start to decrease in terms of intensity. I wasn't really offended by it. I was kind of fine with it. And I was like, yeah, great. No problem. I'm just glad I could help. Right. And I was also sort of honored that somebody said, before you give up, go talk to Brandon.
Yeah.
And so that felt good that I was able to help them and solve their problem and connect them with a professional that could help them and solve their problem. And that it wasn't done from me to get something out of it.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And so that's really where you kind of want to get in all of this is like, those things are going to happen and it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect your business. It's not going to make or break you. It's just a part of you serving people, making an impact on the world, growing yourself personally. And you've gotten to a place where, hey, like my business is completely not dependent upon what everybody else does. I know I'm making a big enough impact to where enough people are going to use me and things are going to work out.
Yep.
Okay. Final words on this.
I mean, I think that's the key, right? Is that do a little bit of self-reflection each time you have a friend or a family member that is not using you, if it's bothering you. And usually you'll come up with an answer that's suitable for the reason and just move on. And there's ways that you can get more people to use you in your circles. And some of them are hosting events to stay in touch with people, things like that. But in the long run, it's not going to matter. Stay focused on lead generation. Stay focused on building your business, and business will come to you from all angles. That's and right. You'll be less and less worried about the one or two deals that you lost.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. All right, guys. Hey, thank you so much for joining us this week. We will see you next week. Have a good one.